Hello there. Today we're going to be talking about a couple of day trips that I recently took in North Carolina. I was up there for a week. 2 days out of that week we decided to spend some time around seeing the sights. The first place that I was taken to was a town called Old Fort, North Carolina. I actually had to double check that myself, but that is indeed the real name. It's a town of a little less than 1,000 people. Very small, but they had a train museum there. And it was a small museum, but it was a neat train museum. It was located right there next to the Red Caboose. So you could go in there and look around the inside of this caboose before going into the museum itself. The museum had a really neat relief map showing where the railroad passed through the area. And of course, around the room there were a couple different artifacts, some tools used to build the railroad, some uniforms, various other things like that. It was a small museum, but it was neat, especially if you're into railroads. Just outside the train museum, there was a monument called the Arrowhead Monument. And this is in the town square. It's about 30 feet tall, chiseled from granite. And the reason why this marker was here is because it marks the westernmost outpost of the old 13 colonies. So, there was a time that, for a white man like me, this would have been about as far west as you can go. It's kind of a neat little landmark there. Anyway, we spent some time there at the Arrowhead Monument, and, they've got some benches there for resting and things like that. And when we were done with Old Fort, North Carolina, we then went on to a marker called Andrews Geyser. Now, Andrews Geyser, it's not a natural geyser. It's man-made, and it's what's known as a gravity-fed geyser. We had quite a bit of fun there. The point of the geyser, it was made as a tribute to the 120 men who died building the railroad in that area. And, you probably notice a reoccurring theme here, railroad, railroad, railroad. Well, the reason is because this is near the Appalachian Continental Divide. And, of course, the Continental is always a difficult engineering feat to handle. You've got to somehow get the tracks through the highest part of the mountains. And so that's the reason why there's so much railroad history in this part of the world. Anyway, after Andrews Geyser, then we went on to a place called the Pisgah Center for Wildlife Education. It was also near Brevard, North Carolina, located off of Highway 276.
Okay, here we go.
This place had free admission, and it was a fish hatchery is what it is. They raise trout there, brook trout, brown trout, rainbow trout. And, you can go in, spend time at the fisheries, or the fish hatcheries rather. You can throw food at the fish and just basically check out what's going on there. They also had some aquariums indoors and some exhibits on various natural processing systems that they had in place. And it was a neat place too for people that are very curious and scientifically minded and whatnot. It was a really neat place to check out. Of course, after we were done with the Wildlife Education Center, we decided to take a trip on a little poorly maintained dirt road out there, lots of potholes and everything. But it gave us a pretty good view of a mountain formation known as Round Knob. And this was also a biking trail. There were a lot of people on bikes doing cross-country stuff, trying to get up this trail. And I remember one of the bikers noticing the mountain formation, and they're going, "Wow, people actually climb that thing?" Because it was pretty impressive to look at. But anyway, that's what we did the first day. Second day, we didn't spend as much time traveling around. We were pretty much in one location the entire day. We went to a place called the Cradle of Forestry in America. It's also off of Highway 276 near Brevard. So, same basic location as the other. But this right here is known as the birthplace of forest conservation in America. The reason for it is because if you've ever heard of the Biltmore Estates, you may or may not have heard of the estates, but you've probably seen them in various movies and whatnot. At times whenever Hollywood needs a really big house to film a motion picture in, they'll use the Biltmore Estates. But anyway, Vanderbilt was the guy who owned the Biltmore Estates. And he established one of the very first schools in the country to train professional foresters. And they had several displays there to check out and everything. A lot of aquarium structures in there. They had a lot of mannequins posed in different positions to show forestry and whatnot. It was pretty neat to check out. They even had a little helicopter ride. And if you could see me right now, you would know that I put the quotes around ride, because it wasn't really a ride. It was really an old helicopter hull with a flat screen TV in it. But still, it was fun. You got to go in there and pretend like you were flying around putting out a fire and stuff like that. It was neat. But then, you leave the main building and they send you on 3 different trails. You can choose which one of these 3 trails you want to go on. There's the Forest Discovery Trail, the Forest Festival Trail, and then the Biltmore Campus Trail. And Biltmore Campus Trail is the one that we took. I would have liked to have seen 1 or 2 of the others, but when you're traveling in a group, you kind of have to go with the group. You don't always get to choose what you're going to do. So we took the Biltmore Campus Trail, and this is the trail that focused mostly on Vanderbilt's school. They had several buildings there. They had the Biltmore Forest School, the building itself rather. They had the Rangers' dwellings, the commissary / store. They even had a neat little tunnel under the road, which the tunnel wasn't really part of anything to look at, but it was fun to say that you were getting run over by a car as you walked under the highway with this tunnel went beneath. Just a bit of goofy humor there. But yeah, we traveled this route and we checked out the different buildings. The Biltmore Forest School building. It was a small school building, but the time that it was built, most school buildings were pretty small. We're kind of spoiled these days with larger structures. This was kind of an average-sized building for the time. And this was a school really for well-to-do boys. Boys who came from wealthy backgrounds. But yeah, they would come here to learn how to be professional foresters. This school produced the very first generation of foresters. The school was not around that long, but it still holds that place in history where it produced them first before anybody else. And of course, you travel on down the path to the store. Same story, a very small building, very poor supplies, but this was the main store for the region. So it kind of shows where we were at versus where we are now in terms of commerce and things like that a store this poorly stocked could be the main store of the region. But you move on past there and you can find Dr. Schenk's office. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. It's a Schenck. And of course the apostrophe S for ownership. Dr. Schenk's office. It's converted from an old abandoned barn, and he was writing a book on forestry here. So you could look in his office and there were all these typewriters and everything. out in the middle of the woods, this shack with typewriters in it. And I thought it was kind of funny, but that's what it was. You could find rangers' dwellings there, places for rangers to stay while working on one of the very first national parks ever. Eventually, the trail wrapped around to the Black Forest Lodge, and they had restrooms there because that was the farthest out point from the trail. After the Black Forest Lodge, the trail looped around and came back towards the building where the whole thing began. And of course, on the way back, you'd run across the blacksmith shop and the student quarters, which were called the Hell Hole. Apparently, the way this school was run is, Vanderbilt, he would buy this land from different people in the area as they left, and they'd leave behind these old houses, these old buildings and everything. And as the students signed up for the school, Vanderbilt, or, well, not Vanderbilt, but whoever he had running the school would basically just say, go find yourself a building to live in. And so the students would go through these different buildings left behind by the previous owners, pick out one that they wanted to live in. And they would always name them. And the students would give their houses names like the Hell Hole, the Gnat Hollow. My personal favorite is Rest for the Wicked. After the bit with the student quarters, the trail pretty much ended. It came back to the building where it started. But we got a good, I'd say 4 or 5 hours out of that one place, just taking our time and enjoying that one trail. And there were 2 others that we never even got to see. We saw the smallest of the 3. There were also a couple of rangers who worked at the location. They were fun to sit down with and talk. Anyway, that's my description of these 2 day trips that we recently took in North Carolina. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you liked this video, please like it, subscribe to it. This channel is brand new, so there's not a lot of content on here at this time. But the more successful this channel is, the more videos I can make in the future. With that, I wish you a good day. Thank you.